slowly and then.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Maybe the sign-in sheet's up here. So what we're going to look at today is two things. We're going to look at medication drug orders and medication labels. And I think I've written on both my copies. So I might have to flip back and forth between some screens. Can y'all already believe it's the first week of October? The first full week of October. I'm having a hard time with that one. Oh, that's not the one I wanted. Oh, maybe I did that one too. Normally I would have these printed off and with me, but today I wasn't thinking. I do that all by myself. All right, everything wants to be slow this morning. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start, hopefully. There are 7 parts of a medication order. Okay. So the first one is the patient's name. And if we're looking at an MAR or we're looking at just the doctor's orders from the chart, or depending on where you work at, you've always got to make sure the patient's name is on the MAR, the medication administration record. Make sure it matches the patient. The 2 is the medication name. 3 would be our dose. 4 is the route. 5 is our frequency. The time we're going to give it, and any special instructions. Six is the day and time it was written or given, depending on what you're doing. If you're on the MAR, you'll have the date and time that it was written. If it's just a prescription you're handing to the patient, it'll also have the date and time that it was written. If a lot of times in the medication record, the MAR, you're going to write the date and time you give it to. Depends on the MAR. And 7 is the signature. And licensure. Now I'm not going to be able to write. Of the person ordering the medication. Okay, so signature and licensure of the person ordering the medication. Any other time I'd have 5 or 6 copies of what I want in my notebook. And I don't. All right, so if I flip back over here, and we look at the medication orders. For our purpose, so if I can get this to go. For our purpose, what we want to concentrate on when we're calculating the dosage is the medication name, the dose, the route, the frequency. Okay? So we're going to concentrate on those 4 things. Sometimes we'll have the date and time. If you're given a medication administration record, you'll have all this information on there. If you're given only the order, because when we start out, we'll be given just the order, and it'll just have the patient's the medication name, the dose, the route, and the frequency, and special instructions. So if we look at the first one, we have Finnegan, or Finnegan, however you want to say it, 25 milligrams IM every 6 hours, PRN, nausea. Okay, so if I'm looking at that, and that's all we really need to know to calculate the dose. That, and we have to know our supply dose. But as far as from the orders, this is all we have to know. We need to know that the name of the medication is a Finnegan, and it's usually the first thing that's written. Okay? Then I have to know the dose. The dose will either be in milligrams, micrograms, milliequivalents, grams, or something along those lines. So in this case, my dose is 25 milligrams. Do I need to enlarge it? Zoom it in a little bit. And then my route. In this case, my route is an IM. It's an injection. But you want to be specific with your route. So my route is going to be the IM. Okay, even though IM is an injection, we're still going to use IM. My frequency is every 6 hours. And I'm going to, when I ask this, I want it kind of written out. Every 6 hours. If it's every 6 hours, how many doses are you going to give? Okay. In a 24-hour period, how many doses would you give? So you're going to take the 24 hours in a day, right? Divide it by the every 6 hour dose, and I'm going to have 4 doses. Okay, because 24 divided by 6 gives me 4. So if you're asked how many doses will you give, because there's different ways, sometimes we'll need the number of doses. And then, is there special instructions every 6 hours, PRN? I forgot that one. As needed. And the thing with PRN that a lot of people don't understand, and my husband is one of them, is that you may need it at 8 o'clock in the morning, okay? And it depends on what you got. With Phenergan, they gave me Phenergan when I broke my ankle to go with my pain medication, because sometimes pain medication will make you sick. So if I took my pain medication at 8 and I took the Phenergan at 8, and they're both every 6 hours, thank goodness, then I couldn't have another dose for 6 hours, even though it says as needed. Well, if I didn't need it in 6 hours, I didn't have to take it. That's what that means. You know, if I need it at 8, I need it again in 6 hours, which would have been 2. If I needed it at 2, I could take it. If I didn't need it at 2, I didn't have to take it. So you take it as needed. And then this for nausea, that's our special instructions. If you can take your pain medicine and you don't get sick, then don't take the nausea medicine. Don't take the Phenergan. Okay? So you're not giving it for pain, or anything else. You're giving it because they're sick to their stomach. Sometimes if you've got something else going on, they'll give you Phenergan. All right. The next one is codeine. Grain, 1/4. PO. Q4H. PRN. Pain. Maybe I should have had this one first. So again, if we list them, the name of the drug or the name of the medication, sometimes it'll be say name of drug, sometimes it'll say name of medication.
Will you be able to see documents?
I can.
Because we don't have the medication order worksheet.
Okay. That should already be in Canvas.
Oh, I'm not seeing it.
It'll be in week 5. Is it not open?
It wasn't last night, and it's open this morning.
Okay, I think it's supposed to open like at 7 o'clock this morning. I mean, not 7 o'clock, like at midnight. No, it wasn't published. Sorry, you should be able to see it now.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Thank you for asking about it. I wouldn't have known. I wouldn't have checked. Oh. All right. So back to this one. Name of drug is codeine. Okay. So name of drug, name of medication, it's the same thing. And then my dose. And this is a dose that you don't see very often and you won't see very often. But you have these older doctors that have been doctoring for 30, 40, sometimes 50 years. We have a doctor in Corning, I swear I know he's in his 80s, and he's still doctoring. Of course, he's still very, still in his right mind, still very able to doctor. But he will use 1/4 grain. And that's an old apothecary measure. That should be GR. So you won't see it a lot, but there's some, especially if you work in clinics with older doctors, you may see it. And I was going to look this up and I forgot to. But a grain, it's either a wheat grain or a rice grain that they're comparing it to. I'm not exactly 100% sure on that one, so don't quote me there. I'll try to remember to look it up. My route is PO, which is by mouth, or orally. I think on the homework I use orally, or the review assignment, I'm going to use orally, because technically by mouth is orally, right? That's the most proper term for it. You won't find by mouth. You might find PO, but PO is the abbreviation. And you don't ever want to use an abbreviation on when answering my homework questions or the test questions. So the frequency is every 4 hours, because it's Q4H, and then the PRN would be as needed. And I could also say if it's every 4 hours, there's no more than 6 doses in a day, right? And then the special instructions is for pain. So, questions on those yet? Medication orders are real simple to the fact that they have no math in them. Okay, it's just kind of learning, and I don't want to say memorizing, but it's kind of learning what parts of the medication order are what. So the third one is potassium chloride. (40 milliequivalents) PO. Yes, ma'am. Oops, got off track there. BID. I looked away from what I was writing. Thank you. Part mine. Yep, I like that. You are so sweet. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bring it to me in the next one.
Yes. So 4 ounces of juice, I'm going to charge that. Okay, what she did, she brought me a mask that says, I will teach math here or there, I will teach math everywhere.
It's cute.
It's cute. And that's just about the truth, because I have answered text messages at 3 in the morning for my nieces and nephews in worked math and cousins. I've got a couple of cousins out in Oklahoma that are homeschooled, and their mother will text me questions. And I have answered on the pontoon in the middle of a lake how to answer math questions. So yeah, that was from a couple of students during the summer. So you know, my husband is always volunteering my service too. Can you math tutor? I'm like, will you quit volunteering my services? Not that I don't care to help or want to help, I do. But let me at least try to say. I just opened it. It was not published. It should be, you have to set your page or something. But it'll look like that. Medication orders. Not right. Think back on. All right, so my drug name, or name of drug, or name of medication. This one isn't really a drug, but it's a medication, or not even a medication, it's an electrolyte. It's potassium chloride, though, but it's things that we do have to give the patients sometimes, to say our patients. I'm not a nurse. I'm not going to give patients anything. I may give my husband his medication, but he's not a patient. He's an overgrown baby when it comes to medication. Yeah. Oh, yeah, they're all, it's a man thing. Sorry. Not all men are like that, okay? I understand that. My grandfather would take his medication without a hassle. But my son and my husband, maybe it's just a young thing. They're all youngs. New generation, yeah. But not all men are. Not all men. I mean, my dad takes this medicine without a fuss. My husband, no. All right, so the name of the drug. What is our dosage?
40.
Milliequivalents. So 40 milliequivalents. And then our route, my mouth. And we're also going to call, or we can also call that oral. Orally, however you want to say that. Our frequency. How often are we going to give it? That's when I scribbled. The BID, do y'all remember what BID is? It's twice a day. Inside the front cover of your textbook, there's a list, there's a list of abbreviations that you need to know. It's also, there's a page in the book. I don't have my book with me to find it, but. All right, so do we have special instructions? Sometimes you won't. On how we're going to give it. Yeah, and 4 ounces of juice. Okay.
No, it's funny because last week you said sometimes my spelling's wrong. And you said that.
I'm not known for my spelling. I did change my G to a J though. I swear, I mean, the thing I got counted off more for in English was my grammar and my spelling. I hate commas. There's an old saying with commas. When in doubt, leave it out. With me, it's when in doubt, put one in. Because chances are, it needed one. Somebody once told me, it says, when you're writing a paper, read and you're in doubt whether or not you need to put a comma. Read the sentence. If it's a place that you would normally take a breath, that's where you put a comma. That has helped me more than anything. Now, I'm not always right, but I'm right more than I'm wrong. All right, so I have amoxicillin, 500 milligrams by mouth, TID. Okay, so my amoxicillin, what's the name of my medication? The name of my drug? Amoxicillin. And then my dose, or my dosage, 500 milligrams. Always make sure you put the unit of measure. Whatever the question is, if it's got a unit of measure, make sure you put the unit of measure. The route, by mouth, and then I'm going to put out here oral, and then the frequency. All right, 3 times a day. You've got the BID, which is 2 times a day, the TID, which is 3, and the QID, which is 4. They're all times a day. And does this one have special instructions? It just kind of ends with TID, right? So there's no special instructions. So we don't have to worry about that one. I'm going to switch out of this. Now, Sarah, can you see the Word document?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, making sure we've all see the same screen. All right, so we did amoxicillin. Let's look at morphine sulfate, the 2 milligrams IV every 2 hours. PRN is for pain. Okay. So what is the morphine sulfate? The name of the drug. What's the 2 milligrams? The dosage. What does IV, IV is intravenous But what does IV represent? The route. And the Q2H, every 2 hours, which represents frequency. And then the pain would be for pain, which would be our special instructions. Okay. Now 7's written just a little bit differently. And this is where I need to flip back to my ladybug. So I have give Lasix. Because sometimes you will be given verbal orders, and you'll have to convert them to written orders, or you have to transcribe them, I should say, into the MAR. So we have give Lasix 20 milligrams orally twice a day. Okay, so if I wanted to write it, I'm going to start with the name of the drug. So I start with the Lasix. I'm going to do my dosage, the 20 milligrams. What would I use to write orally? PO, because it's by mouth. Unless, sometimes it may be orally like sublingual, but it would say under the tongue or something along those lines. Twice daily, how can I write that? Could I use the BID for twice daily? Could I use every 12 hours? Yeah. There's probably a couple others I could use also, but those would be the two most common, the BID or the every 12 hours. All right, so look at number 8. I'm not going to write this one out completely. But it's give prednisone 25 milligrams orally once daily. Okay. So if I needed to write it out as an MAR, in the MAR, type it out, transcribe it, whatever, what am I going to start with? The name of the drug. And if you can't say the prednisone, it took me forever to say some of these names to get it where it would roll off my tongue. So I'm going to give prednisone, the name of the drug. And then my dosage, right? What's my dosage on this one? 25 milligrams. And orally, so I would use PO. And then once daily, how can I write that one? I could do every 24 hours. Could I just do daily? I could write just daily. I know there's an abbreviation for daily, and I don't remember what it is, but we could do that. Or you could do every 24 hours. And with these, when you're trying to decide which abbreviation you're going to write, a lot of times it's going to go with where you work. What do they want? What does the doctor, how does the doctor want you to write it? All right, so let's look at number 9. I have a Tylenol suppository, 325 milligrams, PR, every 6 hours, PRN, for temperature of 101 degrees or higher. Okay, that's written as an order. So the name on this one would be Tylenol. And I would actually, for my purposes, put suppository. Because you want to make sure that it is, they do know that you are giving a suppository there. My dose is 325 milligrams. My route, and it's PR. So what do you think PR is? This one gets everybody. Per rectum. When you're going to give a suppository 90% of the time. My frequency is every 6 hours, right? PRN, or every 6 hours as needed. Now, we have special instructions for this one, right? Are we going to give it if they have a temperature of 100? Mm-mm. They're going to let that temperature go. What if it's 100.9? And you see, you checked him, I say him, it could have been a her. I'm going to call it a child because that's usually the ones that are an infant. That's usually the ones you get the suppositories, or the elderly that can't swallow. But what if the child's, you check the child's temperature, say, at 9 a.m. and it was 100.2, and you checked it again at 10 and it was 100.6, and you see that it's climbing, so you check it again at 10:30 and it's 100.9. Would you go ahead and give it? Yeah. Because you see that it's climbing, and you know that when you check it in 15, if you were to check it in 15 minutes, more than likely it would be 101. Now, sometimes, the more nursing you get into, the more you'll be able to make those decisions. And you probably won't, unless you can tell that the child's temperature is rising, you won't check it that often, but. All right. So that's medication orders. And for the most part, as far as the test goes, homework, you will have to know the 7 parts of the medication order, okay? You will have to know, or be able to match, because I did these are matching, the name of the medication with the name on the order, the dose in the order. So you'll have to be able to match all this. So you'll need to know your abbreviations. But this is a good thing to start. If it's PO, be sure you either choose by mouth or orally. Okay. If it's an IM or IV, and if it's some type of injection, don't choose injection. Choose the specific injection. But that's all matching for Chapter 7. Chapter 8 is medication labels or drug labels. So I'm going to go back. That's something I wanted. How come that's the only one I have? Okay, because it didn't print. All right, so for the drug labels, the components of the drug label, and I won't make you list the components of the drug label because there's a lot of components. We have the generic name, and there will always be a generic name on a drug label, okay? And we'll look at drug labels here in a minute. And then there's the brand name or the trade name, okay? It's a registered trademark of the pharmaceutical company. Tylenol is a brand name, okay? The N-acetylphenyl, that word that I can never say. I can say it in my head. I just can't get it to come out the mouth. There's some words I cannot say. Tylenol is one of them. But the N-acetylphenyl, that one, yeah, is the generic. So you will see that on some drug labels. And you'll see the Tylenol on others. Ibuprofen is a generic name. Motrin would be the brand name. I take I'm not taking that one right now. Wellbutrin. Wellbutrin is the brand name. Buforin is the generic name. Okay? I think I had that right. Diazepam is a generic name. The brand name is Valium. So you have different names for different drugs. After so many years with the thing with the brand name, is that the company that came out, and I'm going to use Tylenol, they came out with Tylenol, seems like 100 years ago. It probably was only more like 50. But they were the first ones to come up with the Tylenol, the mixture, the formula for it. So they named it Tylenol. And then they also have to give the other is the chemical compound, the generic name is the chemical compound. They have the right to that formula for so many years before any other pharmaceutical company can make it under the generic name. Only the pharmaceutical company that owns the rights to the name Tylenol can make it under Tylenol. Every other company has to make it under the generic name. So that's the deal with the trademark, or the trade names. The right will have a route of administration on it. A lot of times this is in the small print, or it's right under the dosage. Again, we'll look at these. It'll have the dosage and how to administer it, whether, it's sometimes you have to just, if it's tablets, it's going to be oral. It'll say if it's an injection, it'll say injectable sometimes, but it'll also say IM or IV or ID or subcutaneous. A lot of times you will get medication in powdered form, and because they're not stable if they're mixed as a liquid, they're only stable in powder form. So you have to mix it, and some of them will only stay stable for maybe an hour. So the pharmacy will send it to the floor, and you mix it right before you give it to the patient. So we'll reconstitute it, and we'll learn how to reconstitute different medications. It'll have an expiration date. Every medication label you get will have an expiration date. If it's a controlled substance, it'll have a capital C with some Roman numerals. Black box warnings is if it causes adverse effects that can be real harmful. So that will give you a black box. I can't even think of one right now. There's other warnings on the label sometimes. It's like don't drive heavy machinery when taking, or don't operate heavy machinery when taking this drug. Take this drug with food. Those are warnings, but they're not necessarily black box warnings. They'll have the total amount in bottles in the bottle. It'll have the total number of tablets. Sometimes they'll give you the total dosage, the total amount of medication in the bottle. And especially if it's in powder form, it'll just give you the total medication. Then it will also give you an approximate value once it's mixed. And that's on the fine print. If it's already a liquid, it'll tell you the total amount of milliliters in the bottle. So it'll give you the total volume. You just have to hunt for it sometimes. Every drug label will have a lot number. The lot number is, all these medications are made in big vats. And they're, they can make thousands of tablets at one time. So they mix it all, and same thing with liquid. They can make thousands of doses at one time. And they will mix it all together and then either put it in the containers or press it into tablet form. But they're all given lot numbers, and that dedicates it. Okay, this batch was made on this day. I'm giving it this lot number. So if it needs to be recalled for something, here a while back, some kind of liquid, I think it was, or maybe it was tablets. They found some crushed glass in them. So they pulled all those that had the same lot number, because evidently there was some crushed glass in some of the procedures somewhere. Or they were either, I think if they pressed it into tablets somewhere along the line anyway. So they had to recall, and they will call it by the lot number. You have single-dose containers and multi-dose containers. This is more when we're talking about injections. If you have a small vial, a single-dose container will have will not have the antimicrobial. I'll have to read that in a minute. It doesn't have the preservative in it, though, to keep it from being more so contaminated. The multi-dose vial, because once you puncture the top of these little vials, you can create a little air space to get in. And so tiny microorganisms can get in. So the multi-dose vial will have that preservative in it. And then it always has the manufacturer's name or the pharmaceutical's name. So these first two, we're looking at the Carafate, and I can't say this one in the green, but if we look at the Carafate, it's Carafate tablets, and I can't say that generic name. But notice, and I'll enlarge this, notice the Carafate has this little R. That's to register trademark. That makes the Carafate the brand name. This Securate something is the generic name. This is a chemical that's in it. Each tablet has 1 gram in it. There's 120 tablets total. This Inventus is the manufacturer, the pharmaceutical company. It's here and here. There's no black box warning or anything on that one. And notice this one, because it's one that I pulled from the internet. It's just a sample label. Sample labels that we use a lot of times will not have the manufacturer's or the lot number or the expiration date. Okay, and the expiration date's put there by the manufacturer as well as the lot number. And like I said, this one is the generic name. Notice it doesn't have a trademark symbol. So there's no brand name. You can put none, you can put NA, you can put anything like that. The generic name is what's listed. Okay, sometimes it's all capitals, sometimes it's not. The 20 milligrams per 2 milliliters is our dosage. It's our supply dose, but it's also our dosage strength. All right. The 2 milliliters here is that it's 2 milliliters in that vial. That's my total volume. It's a single dose vial. So if I'm giving a milliliter and I use this vial, I have to throw a milliliter of medication away. Okay, and we'll have to do that sometimes. Sometimes it may be a 3 milliliter vial and you're only giving a half a milliliter, but all you have available is that 3 milliliter vial. So you'll have to throw the rest of it away because you can only use it one time. Notice this says for intravenous use only. So I can't give it as an IM. I can't give it as anything but through the IV. So some of your medications will say that. This is penicillin penicillin 5 potassium oral solution. So this is telling me my route. It's an oral solution, so my route's going to be oral. I have 250 milligrams, 400,000 units per 5 milliliters. So I can read it, or I can look at it as 250 milligrams per 5 milliliters. If I'm needing to give it in units, because penicillin can be given in units also, or it will be listed in units also. Sometimes, I've used the 400,000 units, depending on what the doctor ordered. The doctor can order, so many units, and then you would use the 400,000 units, or he'd order so many grams, or milligrams, and you'd use this one, use the 25 milligrams. It has 100 milliliters when mixed. That when mixed tells me that it's coming in powdered form, and I add water to it. So this guy here is my reconstitution. It says reconstituted as directed. Each 5 milliliters contain the penicillin V, penicillin 5 potassium, equivalent to 250 milligrams of penicillin. Each 5 milliliters. Yeah. So it's 250 milligrams per 5 milliliters is what we're told here. The Tiva is your manufacturer. I didn't talk about the NDC. There's the barcode is also your national drug code, and that's how they order the drugs. Every drug has its own NDC number. It's also the same number as the drug code. All right, so this Loprid has the R, so that makes it a generic or the brand name. This, whatever this is, tablets, USP. The tablets and the USP is not part of the generic name. Okay, it's just the chemical here. The tablets tells me that I get 600 milligrams per tablet, but that's the form it's in. So my form is tablets. The at that one. So here's our first practice problem. So look closely at it. Can y'all see it clear enough? Okay. So what would our brand name be on this one? Notice, however you say it, yeah, because it has that R, right? And our brand name, that is our brand name. Our generic name would be? Yeah, however you say that, it's all lowercase and in the parentheses, right? Okay. Now, what is our dosage strength? 10 milligrams. There's 10 milligrams of medication in each tablet. Because, and I didn't talk about form, but the form is the tablets. So, we've got several different forms, but tablets is a form, liquids a form, powders a form, suppositories is a form. Okay. What about practice problem 2? Do I have a brand name on it? What's the brand? Medro? I think. I don't know. Sounds good. I even asked the nurses over in the nursing building, and they said they can't always pronounce these. So when we start working problems, a lot of times I'll say, this medication, because I can't say the name. And what's our generic name? Methylprednisolone, yeah. And what's our dosage strength? 8 milligrams. What's our form? Tablets. The form identifies the structure and the composition. So if we look at this one, this is potassium chloride. It's an oral solution. It's liquid, right? But our form would be oral solution because it's a little thicker than a normal liquid. And then whatever that is, sulfate, the form is tablets. Okay. What would be our dosage strength? 5 milligrams. I didn't look at the potassium and ask that. And you probably can't read it because of my line, but it's 20 milliequivalents per 15 milliliters. And that's a 15 milliliter tub. Because it says up here 15 milliliters. All right, now this one was confusing to some people earlier. Does it have a brand name? It doesn't have a brand name. This Avcare, or however you say the Avkare, it's the pharmaceutical company. Because if you'll notice, it's here, and it's also down here. It says manufactured for, and then it gives the name of the company, the manufacturer. So what's my generic name? Can you read it? Nitroglycerin. And what's the drug form? Capsules. It's actually extended release capsules. It's a specific type of capsule. But if you put capsules on it, I'll be okay with that. Dosage strength. 6.5 milligrams. The dosage strength, no, not the dosage strength, the supply dose, because you have a dosage strength in a lot of them, especially if it's in powdered form, you'll be given the dosage strength, and which is different than the supply dose. Now with tablets, the dosage strength is your supply dose. Okay, so with the tablet up here, this extended release capsule, is 6.5 milligrams per capsule. Okay, so that my dosage strength is my supply dosage. But down here, it can be a little bit different because if these have to be reconstituted, if you have to add water. But remember, your supply dosage is always the dosage strength and the form that it's in. And the form being milliliters or tablets. Because if it's any kind of oral solution, injection, it's always going to be a liquid. It's always going to, when you give it, it will be in liquid form and it'll be milliliters. So my heparin injection is 50,000 units per 10 milliliters. Well, if you look right under it, it says 5,000 units per milliliter. These are equivalent because if I take the 50,000 units and divide it by 10, because I would write it, I'm going to use my screen here for a minute. If I take my 50,000 units, and I'm going to write it over 10 milliliters, because that's how you kind of write when you work them out. If I cancel 1 0 with 1 0, I end up with 5,000 units over 1 milliliter. Okay? So if I reduce it down, they're equivalent measures. Okay? So sometimes you can do that. And when you're calculating the drug dosage, you can use either one. You can use the 50,000 units per 10 milliliters, or you can use the 5,000 units per milliliter, depending on what the doctor's ordered, is how you want to do that. The Ritalin, now let me ask you this, since we were doing this along. Is the Ritalin a name brand, or is it a generic name? Name brand. The methylprednate, that's not right. Methylphenidate, I don't know. My son took this and I still can't say it. He put both the brand and the generic. But that's our generic name. The HCL is part of it. The USP stands for United States Pharmacopoeia, and it's a national drug list, okay, of approved drugs. So that's the brand or the generic name. What is my dosage form? Tablets. What is my dosage strength? 10 milligrams. So what's my supply dosage? No, that's the amount. So the supply dosage is your dosage strength and the form, per the form. So this would be 10 milligrams per tablet. Okay? So supply dosage is always your dosage strength per the form. So per tablet, per milliliter, per capsule. And then the total amount would be the 100 tablets. Now this one's methylprednisone. This, I wish I just thought noticed this later. I haven't talked, but there's a question on there about tall man lettering. You have, in the book, if you read chapter 8, it has look-alike, sound-alike drugs. So there's this methylprednisone and the Ritalin. Notice how similar the generic is until you get to the end, except for the PRD, but it's both methyl and methyl. So you've got look-alike, sound-alike. Of course, that's not that it's a look-alike to some degree, just glancing at the generic name. But this is what's called tall man lettering. Okay, it distinguishes the look-alike, sound-alike drugs from one another. So the tall are the all capitals with lowercase. That's tall man lettering. Part of it's capitalized, part of it's lowercase. The capitalized part is the part that either looks like or sounds like another drug. Okay? So this would represent tall man lettering. And this is going to be my generic name, right? It's an injectable. Somewhere on the fine print then, since this is injectable here, it will give me the type of injection it is. IM, IV, ID, or subcutaneous. So this one gives me what? IM. And notice down here it says not for IV use. Okay, so if you're given, and this is one thing you have to watch out for, if you're given, have an order for this medication to be given in an IV, and they send it to you, you've got to read that fine print. Make sure it says for IV, because if it doesn't, then you give an IM medication in an IV, you can cause possible death of with some medications. Or you can cause a major harm because you're given either too much or too little. So what's my dosage strength on this one? 80 milligrams. Supply dosage. 80 milligrams per milliliter. And this 25 vials means that in this package, it's a little bitty box, there's 25 vials of this medication. And somewhere it tells me, have it in the fine print. Oh, yeah, it says it's a 1 milliliter single dose vial. So I have 25 of those 1 milliliter vials in that. So in that whole box, I have 25 milliliters, right? But each vial contains 1 milliliter. All right, total volume. So I was talking about it there. I've been talking about it off and on. It's just the total number of milliliters, or the total number of capsules. We've looked at this one already. Let's look at, well, we looked at that one already. But sometimes they're at the top, sometimes it's at the bottom, sometimes it's in the middle, sometimes it's in the small print. That'll always be on there. And then the administration route. All right, so nitrostat, is that a brand name or a generic name? Brand. And the nitroglycerin sublingual tablets, is all of that my generic name? What's the generic name? Just the nitroglycerin. What's the sublingual? The form? It's the route, actually. But form is good. It's a good guess. The tablets is the form. Okay? So what's my supply dosage? 0.3 milligrams per tablet, or 0.3 of a milligram per tablet. How many tablets are in my box? 100. Okay. So does this one have a brand name? What's my generic name? Penicillin 5 potassium. What's my route? Oral. What's my form? Now this one will be tricky. If you say oral, or that's a route, oral's a route. The form, if you say solution, I'll give it to you, okay? But notice down here it says when mixed, and up here it says when reconstituted, as directed. Those are clues that tell you that this is in powdered form, okay? So if you choose powder, you're good. If you choose solution, you're good, okay? Because I'm more worried about that you know the route and how you're going to administer it. It tells you in this fine print, again we'll get into this, but it tells you how many milliliters to get or to add to it. So it's 100 milliliters when mixed. Okay. I don't know how many. It doesn't say how much is in there. There's. It doesn't even say that. Okay. I'm gonna shut up and go on. Sometimes I have to. All right. So these are our routes. Our delivery methods. These are, you've got your oral, anything by mouth. Your enteral, that's your, like your feeding tubes, your J tubes, the injections, your IM, your IV, your subcut, and your ID, your intradermal. You've got optic, which is your ear, usually drops in the ear. Optic, which is your eyes. You have topical, which is usually creams. You have rectal, which is, per rectum. And then that's usually suppositories. The same thing with the vaginal. It's usually suppositories. Inhalation is inhalers generally. Sometimes they're breathing treatments. And then there's others, depending on what it is. Topical is like creams.
Okay.
Okay. Especially if you ever had poison ivy. Okay, you're lucky.
Okay.
But they'll give you a cream to put on the poison ivy. So that's a topical solution. And that's the only thing I think of because we were watching for poison ivy this weekend when we were out. Some of the medications, like the optic, my daughter is she worked at the pharmacy, she's a pharmacy tech. And she sent me at one time that I had them and something happened and they cleared them off, or it was cleared off my phone. That they had a prescription come into a pharmacy, and it wasn't our pharmacy at Corning where it was. It's on this site that she gets laughs off of. It said it was an eye ointment or eye drops, and it said to administer. It was for the ears, but to administer in the left eye. Or was it for the eyes? Anyway, it was backwards, anyway, whatever it was. But she said that she did tell me when she sent it, and she said, how do you administer? No, I'll take that back. It was for the left ear. It was eye drops. It was for the left ear, but to administer orally. Okay? But what you have, if you've ever been to the doctor when they order your medicines, they're all drop-down boxes. And so she clicked on the wrong drop-down box, the nurse that sent it in or the doctor that sent it in. But there is an eye drop that can be used to treat certain ear infections. So I didn't know that, but it was some of these. One of them had, take so many tablets so many times a day with wood. And I'm like, okay, you're supposed to eat the wood or just hold the wood? Are you a chipmunk? And that one was a typo, I think, on the pharmacist's part, but I wish I had those still because some of those were hilarious. You have your label alerts. Whoops, wrong button. Which, such as, refrigerated all times, keep in dry place. Those will be in the small print. Shake well before using. Don't drive or don't operate heavy equipment, or don't drive. Don't take with alcohol. Those are all label alerts or alerts that the pharmacist might put on. And then you have your black box warning. And it's not always a black box, okay? It's Wellbutrin. It has a black box warning. Of course, warning, do not use with other medicines that contain bupropion, whatever that word is. That's not ibuprofen, it's bupropion, I don't know, something. It's another, it's the generic name of this. It's a SR, I don't remember. It's been a while since I took Wellbutrin. But it's a high concentration of it, whatever that is, and you don't want to mix two of these antidepressants together, or two medications with the same time. It's a serotonin, it causes a serotonin something in your brain. But so, this is it's a label warning. The black box warning is federal law, requires dispensing Wellbutrin with medication guide under the label. So you can't just take the Wellbutrin out of the bottle it comes in and put it into a pharmacy bottle. You've got to dispense it in the Wellbutrin bottle it came in, because it's got a medication guide under it. And you need to, if you've got those, if you get medications that have those guides, or if they have the guides in the box with them, you really need to read, at least skim through them. They've got some nice information that comes in handy. Now, these are in tablets, right? So what is my supply dose? 100 milligrams per tablet. And again, the black box warning, this one's an orange. Okay? Sometimes they're just highlighted in red. It's another black box warning. But they're going to stand out, I guess, is what they're called, black box warnings, but they're going to stand out. The manufacturer, why I had that 5 milligrams labeled. I talked about the manufacturer. This is, Lanet. And then here it tells you down here, manufactured by. We've looked at that label before. Again, we have our methylprednisone. the lot number, and the expiration date. When you're giving medications, now I know the pharmacies and the hospitals go through every so often, and they will clear out all their expired medicines. But, you know, we're all only human, so sometimes they'll miss an expired medicine, or maybe it expires before they clean out their drugs. So check the expiration date. If you're working in a nursing home or in a clinic, and you're giving, because I love my pediatrician, because I had 2 kids that were 3 years apart. If one of them caught something, the other one was going to come right behind them with it. Just the way it went in the household. We spent the whole month of June and most of May in the house with chicken pox, because my son got it, and then my daughter got it. And she broke out exactly 2 weeks to the day after he broke out. And it was 2 weeks to the day from when my daughter had her a wellness check at the doctor's office. So he got it playing in the toys because I took him with me. Both kids aren't sick, don't take them both to the wellness. But check, you know, if you're giving it, you know, she always gave me the samples. So check the expiration date on the samples if you're working for a doctor's office, because they are good, you know, some doctors are really good about giving samples out. Of course, and then the lot number. If it's expired, if you're in a clinic or something, you probably just need to figure out, you know, how are you supposed to dispose of it and dispose of it. And then your lot control numbers, they're different places. Again, some of the labels that you're going to see in this class, though, are ones that are sample labels that I've downloaded from the internet that won't have the expiration date or the lot numbers on them. All right, we haven't looked at this one yet. So what is my brand name?
Does it have 2 or is it?
It has 2. Because both Biaxin has the trademark R and TrimTab has the trademark R. So there's 2 different brand names that goes by from the same company. I don't have a clue why they changed it. And what is the generic name? Clarithromycin. And the form? Tablets. And what is my supply dosage? 250 milligrams per tablet. How many? What's my total amount? 60 milligrams. If you're ever asked, and sometimes I'll do this just to trip you up, but we'll discuss it a little bit more before. But if you look at it and you say, I wonder how, and I say this because I had a niece that was 3 years old. She got in her nanny's purse, and Nanny didn't put the cap on the Tylenol tight enough, and she didn't know how many Tylenols were in there. But my niece started taking them, thinking they were candy. And how many times have you heard the child eats the medicine thinking it's candy? And so they had to rush her to the hospital and have her stomach pumped. And she was fine. She'd only ended up with maybe 2 or 3, but it was enough that it could have hurt her because she's only 3 years old. But how much medication, if it was a whole bottle, and you might have a patient that commits suicide by taking a whole bottle. And I say this because my niece did commit suicide by taking a bottle of medication. Or my niece, my cousin, sorry, too much family. But she took hers throughout the day. But there was a guy in there that had committed suicide at the same time that had taken a whole bottle of Tylenol. And they had found the bottle beside him. How much medication had he got in his system if it was, say, 60 tablets? How would you find that out? And just multiply 250 by 60, and that would tell you how much medication he had put into his body. And he did live. My cousin didn't, but he did live. He had a lot of brain damage, though, because they didn't give him, it's like my cousin, they didn't get her. She didn't tell anybody. She ran around all day, and she was taking downers, and I don't know which one. On purpose. Yeah, she wanted to. And this was planned. She was taking them with alcohol. And she was she'd been divorced for maybe 6 months, and her mother-in-law had interfered in her marriage. And then she was dating this guy that was beating her. And her mom and dad had decided to play tough love. And so you can't come back home. You've got, you've made your mess. You've got to.
That's so sad.
It is.
That is so sad.
And her mom and dad had to live with this, She did call her brother and her dad, but she was already had so much in her system. And she did walk into the hospital under her own power, but she collapsed as soon as she got in the emergency room.
So she tried to save herself.
Yeah, and I guess in a sense she did. She realized that she really, yeah. So, you gotta watch, you gotta know. And you watch people too. It's Breast Cancer Awareness Month, but this whole year has been suicide prevention.
They really have.
Because of all the quarantine and stuff that you've really, some people take this serious. They don't leave their house. They don't realize that they can get out and get in their yard or go to the park as long as they distance from everybody. And a little bit of exposure to everything is good for you. It's when you're overexposed to anything that's bad for you. But anyway, so sometimes you may need to know, especially if you're working the ER, the total amount of medication. Controlled substances. To me, the schedule is backwards, but it's the one that's supposed to be there. So controlled substance, you've got a capital C, and then you've got your Roman numerals 1 through 5. So the I is your Schedule 1, and it's your high potential for abuse, and it's unsafe, okay? There's a lot of medications out there that are like that. There's a lot more of their Schedule 2. There's a high potential for abuse, and you've got a severe dependence risk. That's a lot of your pain medications, your hydrocodones, your Tylenol 3s, your oxycodones. Those are generally either 1 or 2 because there's a high dependence with them. And you can overdose with them too. Schedule 3, there's less potential for abuse and a moderate amount of dependence. But you get that right person, you're going to take them. A Schedule 4 is a low potential abuse and a limited dependence, but these are all narcotics too, by the way. Schedule 5 is a lower abuse potential and limited dependence. So you've got to, these have to stay locked up. You can't just leave them out. And let's see. It's narcotics, stimulants, hallucinogens, anabolic steroids, and chemicals used in the production of illegal substances. But if we're looking at this label, it's morphine. But see how it has the capital C with the 2 Roman numerals in it? That's a class 2, okay? It has a high potential for abuse. To me, I would think the way my brain works, class 5 should be, because it's a larger number, it should be the one with the higher potential abuse. Class 1 should be the lowest, but I don't know, it just work different. The single dose to multi-dose vials. The single dose is typically preservative-free, and they don't have the antimicrobial preservatives. That sounds better when it's said right. The multi-dose vial, it contains a preservative and may be used to administer multiple doses of the medication. It's only given to the same patient, though. Okay. So I have a 1 gram per 10 milliliters. It's a 10 milliliter multi-dose vial. So I can give multiple doses out of this. This one is 12 milligrams per 4 milliliters or 3 milligrams per milliliter. This is a 4 milliliter single dose. So if I was to order, or the doctor was to order the medication and say you calculate it and it was a milliliter and a half, 1.5 milliliters. You're going to give the 1.5 milliliters out of this and then you're going to throw the rest of the bottle away. With the multi-dose vial, you have to label it. You're going to label the time. If you have to mix it, you're going to label the time you mixed it. Maybe I'm saying this wrong. But you're going to, no, not with the multi-dose. I'm thinking of something else. Sorry. Here's our practice problem. All right. So this one's got it kind of different. It's not asking for the name of the drug, but what's the drug form? Tablets. What's the route of administration? Orally. By mouth or orally. If it's a tablet, it's not, and it doesn't say suppository tablet, then it would be orally. So tablets, capsules, caplets, unless specified otherwise. What's the dosage strength? 40 milligrams. And what's the total amount? The total amount is the number of tablets in the box. 90 tablets. Is there a black box warning? No. Is there tall man lettering? No. Is it a controlled substance? No. What's that? Does it have a brand name? No. All right, here's another one. What's the drug form on this one?
Powder.
Powder. You said well, injection wouldn't be a drug form. It would be like a route, type of a route. Okay, I can't tell if it's powdered because it doesn't say. It doesn't give me directions for reconstitution.
So it'd be a solution?
So it'd be a solution or a liquid. Yeah, even though it says dilution required, it can still be a liquid. It's just a highly concentrated liquid. So I would say a liquid. Route of administration would be, how are we going to administer? IV. What about IM? So for IM or IV, right? So our route, I would put IM or IV. What's my dosage strength? 40 milligrams per 10 milliliters. The dosage strength when it's in liquid form like this is going to be per milliliter, just like our supply dosage. How many milliliters is in the bottle, the total amount, or in the vial? That one's kind of tricky also.
Is it 40 milligrams?
There's 40 milligrams, it's the amount of medication in a 10 milliliter vial. But how many milliliters of solution? So the 10 by 10 milliliters.
So the 4 milligrams per milliliter?
Well, that's also that's a single dose. Well, it depends on what the doctor's ordered. But that is the dose. That would also be a dosage strength. Okay.
So the 10 by 10 milliliters?
Okay, in a sense, yes. The 10 by 10 milliliters means that I have 10 vials in that box,
Right.
and each vial has 10 milliliters. But if I'm talking about one vial, how many milliliters do I have? 10 milliliters. Okay, so if you have 10 by 10, or the one that we had 25 by 1, or you might have 5 by whatever, the first, unless it has milliliters with it, if it's like 5 by 3 milliliters, then I'm going to have 5 vials that have 3 milliliters in it. Okay, so the first 10 is the number of vials I have. The second, the 10 milliliters, is the amount that's in each vial. Does that make sense to y'all? Okay. Is there a black box warning? No. Is there tall man lettering? Mm-mm. Is it a controlled substance? Yes. And it's a controlled substance. What class is it? 4, class 4. Is there a brand name? Yes. Even though the Ativan doesn't have the trademark symbol with it, it does give you the lorazepam. So Ativan is a brand name. So sometimes you can't always rely, if you're given 2 names, an Ativan and lorazepam. And the lorazepam, like it is, lowercase in parentheses, and that's going to be a generic. So if it gives you another brand, it'll give you the brand name. It's just not registered, evidently. All right. And that's just the natural drug codes. The USP and the NF can both be on the drug labels. Of course, the USP is the United States Pharmacopoeia. The national formulary is NF. They're both, again, listed the official national list of approved drugs for the United States. Combination drugs, you'll see some of these. When a doctor orders a combination drug, he will order like Percocet, 5 milligrams by 325 milligrams, 2 tablets twice a day, or 1 tablet 4 times a day, or whatever, how much. But he will order it by the doctor will order it by the number of tablets they're going to give. Okay. The supply dosage is always expressed as a ratio. Well, we're not going to get into those. It's always expressed as a ratio, and it's always the milligrams or the solution. How am I going to say that? It's the amount of the dose per the form. Okay, so it's the dosage strength per the form. Chapter 9, I don't remember if Chapter 7 actually, or 8 actually has the 6 rights of medication, but I know Chapter 9 has the 6 rights of medication in it. Know the 6 rights. Right patient, right drug, right amount, right route, right time, right documentation. There's more than 6 rights of a patient. There's more than 6 patient rights. I think there's like 10 or 12 or something. But for the medication administration, there's 6 rights. You've got to check the patient's name, and there's 3 ways to check it, and you're only going to use 2. That's always the patient's name and date of birth, if the patient is verbal, or patient's name and the barcode on the wristband, if the patient is not verbal, or if they're asleep or something. So you're always going to check it against the medication order in the MAR. Make sure you've got the right patient. You check the drug labels 3 times. When you're filling your cart, or the pharmacy sent up the cart, you're going to check the medication against the patient's MAR. When you get ready to prepare the medication to give it, again, you're going to check the medication against the patient's MAR. And then after preparing the medication and before administering it. So you may have it all in the little cups and everything, but you're going to make sure before you walk into that patient's room to give it to them that you've got the right medications, or right medication. Okay. And then this is just a quick review. And like I said, this is, you can print this out now that I've opened the module. What I'd like to do is test after next Monday, open it like Monday morning and give you till Monday night to do it or something. And again, it'd be a 90-minute test. Hopefully it won't be as many questions as the last one, or as many points. Hey, when I give you tests like that, it makes me feel me to grade them. Even if all I do is go in and look at the ones you miss, I still have to open everybody's up, get your, and you will have to upload the work again, just like always. That's the only way I know to give you partial credit for one, and that everybody's doing their own work, or everybody's showing their own work. Because if you were sitting in class, you'd have to show your work too. Okay, I haven't put the homework in it. I've got homework. It's homework, not homework. It says it's chapter 3 through, a homework review for chapters 3 through 9 or something. I'll have that posted up in Canvas this week. Okay. I thought I had uploaded it, but I haven't. Again, there's a lot of good practice problems in your textbooks that you can use to review on and to practice in. But this test, the only math you're going to have is for 3, 4, and 5. The conversions, the household, the conversions, and the time and temperature. So, 6, 7, and 8. 6 was equipment that was used. You're just going to have to kind of match your syringes. 7 is the medication labels. Know your 7 parts of the medication label, or not the medication label, medication order. And then identifying the parts of the drug label. Okay. So the name of the drug, I'll ask for a brand name, a generic name, dosage, a route. I asked for 5 things. I can't think what the other one was. But those type of things, be able to identify those on the label. It's the things that you're going to have, I think it's total amount was the other. Excuse me, it's the things you're going to have to be able to use that label to calculate your dosage. Okay, because that's what I'm focusing on, is the calculation part. All right, any questions? Okay, we cover a lot. In a hybrid class, we cover a lot. Y'all need to read Chapter 9. I've made all my classes read Chapter 9. It's more nursing than it is anything. So that's why I want you to read it. I don't know if I haven't pulled much out of Chapter 9 at all, but the test will be real similar to what the review is. Okay, so I'll give you some idea. All right, so if there's no questions, then I will see you next Monday. Okay.
It's like that. It's just about the uploading the work.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how to do that. Like, I have the work from it, but I don't know how to do it.
Do you know how to attach it to an email? Okay. If you go in, let's see. This is the first test, and I want to preview it. It's not going to let me attach anything. I've tried this before. But you'll click Choose File. Go over here and choose whatever file that you say. You can save it wherever you scan it and save it to your computer. Or email it to yourself and save it to your computer. And then you're going to open, and it should give you the file name right here. It should be, once you choose your file, and it's not doing it right.
I was add another one, but it didn't want to do that.
It didn't add, did you click add another, click the wheel on that?
Yeah, I think I sent it to message to you because it was like in text that and I only did text one.
Huh, I don't know how to fix that. Just email it to me if it won't.
Alright, so it's
Okay, yeah, email us, and if you have trouble uploading it, or if you run out of time and can't upload it, then email it to me. Okay? I mean, I'd rather have it in the homework or in the assignment, but I'd much rather have it at all than, not get it. So if you can email it to me, that would be great.